On the build show today, window installs with a thick foam blanket on the outside of my house. So I'm coming to you from my real rebuild project where I've got 2 inches of exterior insulation on my house, which makes any window install a little bit trickier. And I also have a bunch of different window styles and door styles in my house from Jeld Wen. So we're going to get into all the nerdy details on how to install these windows, how to flash them correctly, how to make sure that 100 years from now they're still going to be nice and waterproof. Today's video is sponsored by Jeld Wen. Let's get going. All right guys, so we're talking today how to install Jeld Wen windows. Jeld Wen makes a bunch of different product lines, but basically the install is going to be the same. Stay tuned for a future video where actually I'm going to be reviewing several of the different products that I'm using on my house. But I do want to say thanks to these guys for supporting my videos. And also I want to mention before we unpack this, look at this great packing job. This shipped from Tri-Supply locally here in Austin, and look how nice this is when it comes out to the job site. We're able to move these around and we're not worried about breaking that flange on the outside. Okay, so if you've been paying attention to my videos, you know I've got a thick blanket of PolyIso insulation on the outside of my house. That's this right here, which means that this window install is a little bit tricky. It's not kind of the standard install. Now I did do a video before on how to install these windows with just standard zip on the outside, so check out that video. There'll be a link in the description. But let's get into this. I'm gonna go meet Bill Wood, my frame carpenter, and we're gonna walk you through all the steps. All right guys, so we're on the side of the house where we did our first install, and I'd highly recommend, no matter what window, no matter what system, you wanna get the whole crew together and do one install with everybody on the team, builder and architect if possible, whoever's doing the details, to talk through it. Now I'm here with Bill Wood from Madeira Framing. Bill and I have worked together for at least a dozen years now. Bill, talk me through the install, but let's start at the zip system sheathing that we use first and walk me through the steps.
Okay. I know that there's a lot of stuff here, but it's all basic standard framing. Standard frame walls, zip system sheathing, which is our WRB layer. Then we put exterior rigid foam, 2 inches of that. And then around the window, we've got a 2-inch butt that kind of traps the perimeter of the foam.
Okay, so then after you were done framing with the zip system, the first thing we did, and by the way, Steve Basic, architect out of Boston, did a fantastic job of putting these details together with me. This is really Steve's work here. We taped with a piece of zip tape the sheathing all the way around the rough opening to make sure that that's a really airtight connection. And then Bill's team put a 2x2 all the way around. It's not really a 2x2, it's really more like a 2x1.5. Right. We took a pressure treated 2x4, we ripped it on a table saw to 2 inches, and then the 1.5 inch face is sticking out. The 2-inch depth is gonna capture our foam, and it's the same thickness as our foam. So if we would have had thicker foam, let's say 3-inch foam, we would have used a 3-inch rip of a 2x4. And pressure treated in case any minute amount of water gets there. We want to make sure it's going to be rot free. Now I'll take it from there, Bill. Once the 2x2's on, you guys install the foam. Now what's the first step on the window install?
We treat our windowsill like we would normally do. In this case, we're using the zip products. And so we use the stretch tape, and that goes over the top of our sloped sill. And so we're kind of imagining now, whenever we're doing outside insulation, we have to imagine that that is now our sheathing layer.
Yeah, that's right.
So we've taken our stretch tape, we've run it down our sill and coming up our legs a bit.
And actually, let me interrupt you there. I'd actually like to show these guys how to do that, and we have a window. Let's cut to that real quick and I'll show you how to do that. All right guys, now this opening is prepped. You can see we've got zip tape on all sides, which is taped to the sheathing back to the rough opening. We've added the 2x2 on the outside, so the next step is we want to add our sill. Pull this down so we can talk a little easier. Now we're using Zip System stretch tape. This is a really cool product. A little bit difficult to use if you've got a bigger opening, but in a smaller opening you can do it by yourself. Oh, the wind is brutal right now. Hard to do with the wind. Hopefully I can do this. We shall see, guys. We've got a split release liner on here, and you can see I'm just releasing the back side. I'm gonna fold this in half, trying not to touch it to each other. It's sticky. You're gonna see if it sticks to anything, it's gonna stay there. Oop, there's the wind. And that's the beauty of cutting a piece 6 inches up on both sides. These are really, really handy tools right here. We're using a Bondo scraper is basically what this is. And this is just giving us a little bit of adhesion and tack. And we're gonna come back with the J roller in a minute though and really nail this thing down. The beauty of this is it's allowing me to get into the corners, really stick that down. We don't want a big bubble in the corners. Okay, now here's the fun part. We're gonna grab it with two hands right here in the corner, and we're gonna peel back and stretch it. Oops, didn't quite get it down. It's kind of repositionable until we get that J roller on. Like all the Huber products, the adhesive is pressure sensitive. Because I haven't rolled it yet, I'm able to get that out and stretch it out perfectly. Oh man, that's such a satisfying product to use. Because now I've got a continuous sill pan. Now I sloped my sub-sill. My framers put a 5-degree bevel on that. Now the last step is we're gonna J roll it. I'm gonna get some good adhesion on here. And you'll see when this sets up, it's not going anywhere. See how that kind of stretched out right there? It will continue to stay like that. Now we've got a fully continuous sill pan. Next step is we're gonna take a 4-inch piece of zip tape and we're gonna cover this joint right here. We're doing the bottom first and we're working our way up. So we're gonna come up to here next and cover this, and then we're ready to set this window. Okay, Bill, so now that the stretch tape's on, what's the next step in the process?
Just like a standard window install, we're gonna go ahead and run our tape on the inside to kind of protect our jambs.
That's right, so that's running past the 2x2 and connecting with the original zip tape we put on there.
That's right.
And it's going on to the face here of the foam, so we're preparing to put the window in.
That's right. Next is gonna be go ahead and caulk the 3 sides in horseshoe shape, the window.
Actually, let me interrupt you there because I would actually like to show these guys that and get to a couple details.
Good idea.
Let's go show you that real quick. All right, now we need to caulk the flange next before we set the window, but I want to tell you real quick about this cool gun the guys at Tajima sent me. This is a really top of the line, well-made Japanese gun. But check it out, you can change the thrust ratio. So with one stroke right now, it's on the long side. If we flip this button down, let's say we have a more viscous liquid, now it's gonna go to about half that. So if we had a liquid that was a little more viscous, we can push more with each stroke. Check this out too, one other thing I like, really long piercer right here. So a lot of times it's not long enough, you gotta find a really long nail. This one's built in much longer. Okay, now on this flange, and we're gonna caulk the flange of the window, there's 2 ways to do it. You could either caulk the rough opening, but I kind of like to caulk the flange. We're gonna be using OSI's Quad Max. And we're gonna only caulk 3 sides on this thing. We're not gonna caulk the bottom. So let's see, this is the bottom, right guys? Yeah. And we're gonna run that bead just inside of where our nails are going. Now we also dry fitted this to make sure we were good to go before we did this. And again, I'm not caulking the sill. Now you're also gonna notice where Bill is in the rough opening there, that at the sill, we put some shims down. We wanna make sure this window is not sitting tight against the bottom. We wanna shim it up just there. I'm gonna put a little more of it right there. Okay, good, now we got a nice continuous bead of that Quad Max. So these shims right here are gonna keep that window off the sill pan that we made. Okay, you're gonna set it?
You ready?
Luke? Yeah, go for it, brother. And then you're gonna see later when we nail this off, the guys are gonna put some smaller shims. Those red shims, when you buy those horseshoe shims, they're about an 1/8 inch per shim. And when we dry fitted it, we're checking to make sure that we've got an even reveal all the way around on the rough opening. We're also looking to make sure that as we nail this window off, that we've got the window plumb and square in the opening. And the way we typically do that is we're gonna put 1 nail in a corner. I'm gonna do that in a second. And then we've got a laser set up inside, which is gonna be lasered right at the bottom sill of the window, which allows us to put 1 shim in. And then if we need to, we can shim up and down a little bit on one side or the other just to make sure it's nice and plumb. Plumb is level except in the vertical position, right? And then once we're nice and level, the last thing we want to do is check the operation before we finish nailing off. Now this is a fixed window, so we don't need to do that. We're really just making sure that the reveal looks good on the inside and we're plumb. So we're gonna go ahead and nail this off. And again, when we nail off the bottom, we're gonna put some shims in before we nail that, which means that if any water somehow gets through this window over the next decades, it's gonna hit that air space right there and be able to run out the face of our drainage plane right here. Okay, Bill, now that the window's in place, we're caulked in. How are you getting that window level and square? And tell me about the shims we've used on the sill as well.
Okay, so we use shims. We always want to keep the window off the sill. And that's, if any water gets back there, it gives it an opportunity to go past the window. Our sills are sloped towards the outside, and that can move outboard. We've leveled our window. We get it centered in our hole. So when you either trim or sheetrock, at least you've got, you know, basic reveal on both sides.
And you also set up a laser on the inside too,
We do.
right?
We laser our windows in, and especially, you know, if you're running horizontal siding on the outside, you want those lines to be right. Or 4 or 5 windows on the inside in one room, you want all those to go plane.
So when you set that laser up, you could either set it so it's kind of perfectly in line with the bottom flange, or bottom sill rather, of the window, or it can be randomly on the window and use a tape measure, right?
Yeah,
Either way.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. It doesn't really matter.
Gotcha.
Okay, so our window's in. We've attached it to the buck.
Okay, so we've nailed it on all sides.
We've nailed it around.
And I do want to put a pause there for 1 second, because I do want to note at the bottom, when we're nailing it, you're seeing we're going to skip every other nail on the nailing flange, and we're also going to put some smaller shims. You could use slightly thicker shims. This is like an 1/8 inch shim on a couple of those locations, so that we have a weep path for water to get out. And you briefly mentioned it, but I want to take a quick second to say these guys do a great job on sloping the sub-sill, meaning the framing, the 2x4 itself, is cut at a 5-degree angle with all the cripples underneath it. So the sill itself is sloped. If you're not doing that, if you have a flat sill, you might consider using a piece of beveled cedar or another way to give some slope to it, or even a back dam is a great option as well, so that any water that gets in there is going to want to go by gravity to the outside. Okay, Bill, sorry to interrupt. So then you've got the jam tape on. What's next after that?
Jam tape. In this case, we're covering our head, which is our buck, from the zip wall over the top of the buck, over the top of the flange, and you will notice that we've actually gone onto the edge of the window slightly with our zip tape.
I know, I love that detail.
And that just gives us a much, if something ever happened with it, all flanges are different.
Yep.
Depends on the window manufacturer. So this just gives us a little belt and suspenders to try to get that as waterproof as possible.
That's really smart, Bill. Okay, so that's 6 inch at the top there, which allows us to go up the wall at least 2 inches or so.
That's right.
And one thing I do want to mention on this system, the zip itself is my water and air barrier, especially my air barrier. However, the way we're installing these windows, the face of the foam is my drainage plane, because later we're going to come in and we're going to put a 1x4 on top of the foam, and then we're going to put hardy plank siding, and this window will look like a normal install. You won't be able to tell there's a bunch of thick foam insulation on the outside. And stay tuned for future details on that. But any water that gets into here is going to have an air gap to fall out harmlessly. I don't need this to be perfectly detailed, because all this is doing is just giving me a drainage plane. All right, now Bill, you did a beautiful job making this the other day with me. This is our head flashing.
That's right.
Give me a quick version of how to make one of these.
Well, what we did is we knew we wanted a back piece of 2 or 3 inches. That's kind of standard. So we'll be taping this against the zip wall.
Yep.
This is our actual buck dimension.
Yeah, so that's our foam thickness.
That's right, and foam thickness. And then our the depth of it. And then this part is actually going to sit over the top of the window frame, and then with our standard 1/4 inch kick out and kick down, and with a reverse hem as to not catch any water. And then what we did is, Matt likes this detail where we end dam over the top of the window, so water's not actually running down the leg of the window. It kind of coaxes the water to shoot out.
Yeah, so any water that comes down here, it's not going to want to run on the sides, it's going to want to kick. It's a slight detail, but I like that. I keep it small too, so I could either butt my trim or I could knife that through my trim if I wanted to. And there's just a little bead of geocell sealant on there. And here's what it's going to look like when it's all said and done. We're going to nail that up with a couple roofing nails, 4-inch zip tape here. That way anything above here gets in, it's going to want to kick out above the window, and it's not going to get this window wet. And then we're going to ultimately fill in this with a piece of foam when we're all done, and then rain screen, and then hardy. So this is a bomber install. And I would also mention this house has good overhangs. We've got a 2-foot overhang everywhere in the house, and a couple of windows in the back of the house that don't have a big overhang. We're going to be making awnings for some particularly exposed windows. So we're taking all precautions. Bill and I have been building enough and seen enough rot in our lives to go, hey, let's not just wear a belt, let's put suspenders on as well. This is definitely a top of the line install. Bill, great job to you and your crew. Love working with you guys. I want to say big thanks to Jeld Wen for sponsoring this video. These have been some great windows. As I mentioned earlier, I've got a future video coming up where I'm going to review these, and I have several different types of Jeld Wen products between windows and doors going in my house, so stay tuned for a review on those. But this is a top of the line install for a really well insulated, really airtight house. If you're not seeing my other videos on this project, go check out my playlist. I'll put a link in the description below for some of the other videos from my personal build over here. If you're not currently a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. We've got new content every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show. Hey guys, I was really excited to put this new Jeld Wen Auraline composite window into this project. They haven't quite hit the market yet, but I got to be one of the test houses. So stay tuned for more information on these in the future.